Hi. It used to take years to know for sure where your music stood. First, you played for friends and family, and of course, they loved your music, not because they knew you personally, but also because being used to high school marching bands and piano recitals, you were the only person they knew personally who could make music that sounded remotely like what they heard on the radio by the biggest stars. You'd written a couple songs that seemed catchy to you and those you played them for. Your friends learned to sing along, and fueled by the encouragement of your success among your pals, you went on to play some local gigs, and maybe you recorded a demo in your basement on a 4-track. Then you worked for 2 summers, saved your pennies, and made a somewhat decent recording at a real studio. Maybe it wasn't Grammy worthy, but at least it sounded professional, and you played your new recordings over and over to yourself. You'd imagine yourself as your intended listener, trying to hear it as they would hear it for the first time, and you were impressed with your work. Then you bought a book about how to network in the music business, full of addresses and suggestions on how to write a cover letter, how to send in a demo tape to labels, publishers, and managers. And you sent them in and waited for weeks and months to hear back, but you usually never did. Meanwhile, you continued to play a few gigs. You'd rally your friends to come hear you play your songs, which you were continuously improving, and it was sounding better and better. And you enjoyed the attention from within your circle of friends and their friends and their family. And after all, you were the guy or the gal who was the musician. To them, what you did was the equivalent of magic. You know, they didn't know how to make those sounds. They didn't even know how to begin to write a song. So you were pretty hot stuff. Finally, you met someone who was someone in the music business. And when you did, man, you did not let that go. You did whatever it took to make sure they heard your music. You'd lay awake at night fantasizing about how the guy you met knows so-and-so and has worked with this big star and that big star. And after you'd given him enough time to listen to your music, you followed up. But then usually the letdown. He just wasn't feeling it. He didn't hear anything special about it. Maybe he sugarcoated it a little bit. I mean, after all, it's tough to tell someone so full of hope that their music sucks right to their face. So after the initial disappointment, you remembered that the books you read said that it was a numbers game. Colonel Sanders got turned down a bunch of times before a banker believed enough in his chicken restaurant idea. And even the Beatles got turned down. And up until Mr. Showbiz told you that your music wasn't special enough, everyone else who had listened to it and really got it had told you that your music was great. So you set out again to meet a new guy with connections. Maybe the engineer at the studio knew someone, and on it went. Maybe years went by before you finally were getting enough of the same kind of feedback from enough people who knew what they were talking about that you had no choice but to accept that maybe your best efforts weren't cutting the mustard. If you weren't tuckered out, you changed some things and tried again. If not, and if you weren't now too old to be the next emerging star, maybe you didn't hang it up and focus on a career outside of performing music, but some people did. Slow failure until it was too late to try again. That's how it used to be, but that's not really how it is today, not even close. Today, you want and you can get fast failure. What? Okay, I'll come back to that. But first you have to face the reality that failure is inevitable. Not permanent failure. You will face some failure, though, if you're ultimately successful. Not everyone's going to love what you do. Not everyone's going to get it. Not everyone who hears your music is going to become a fan. And not every Mr. Showbiz you meet is going to offer you a deal. In fact, some will tell you that you suck. Or they'll think it, but they'll sugarcoat it for you while they tell you something slightly less harsh while not giving you the deal that you're seeking. So, if failure is inevitable, the sooner you get it out of the way, the sooner you can learn from it, make adjustments, and try again. The digitization of the music business has spawned the emergence of online services for musicians that enable you to get your music to the ears of thousands of industry decision makers and even potential fans very quickly. You can get real, unvarnished feedback. You can get song critiques from Grammy winners and even career coaching from veterans and current stars, all within days and weeks of delivering your music to them online. So really, gone are the days of waiting months and years to find out that you don't quite measure up when compared to your peers, instead of just being compared to piano recitals and local talent shows and open mics. The feedback loops have shortened, and the fact is, if you're not using these services, you're just going to be outcompeted by other musicians who do. They will go through the cycle of create, get feedback, refine, get feedback, refine, get feedback, refine, until they succeed. And if they get through that entire cycle before you even get through the first feedback phase, you'll just watch them succeed from the sidelines. And I don't mean to say that you're always competing with others, although you are, it's a market. But mostly you're competing against time, which of course stands still for no one. So my point is, if you're serious about success, fail fast.